You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks for making us your first listen once again. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you're going to get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you as we are here. We made it. We're wrapping up the most electrifying open week anywhere in college football. We'll spend some time coming up in just a moment listening to a thought from Baylor head coach Dave Aranda as we begin to turn our attention toward the Bears, fitting the description of the next potential victim. Also want to review the road taken by these two programs since they met on that ultra disappointing night not too long ago in Lubbock when Baylor showed up and thumped you around a little bit. But first, wanted to get back to a thought from Red Raider head coach Joey McGuire. And you and I both thought this was one of the more interesting parts of what they are doing with their open week. It is a self-scouting week for the Red Raider coaching staff. And here is Coach McGuire explaining a little further what exactly that means.
Our offensive staff is doing a self-scout, but a self-scout on our defensive staff. Our defensive staff is doing a self-scout. I can't wait this Sunday. I ask them to leave their egos at the door and be very critical of each other, be very critical of me. I'm really excited about that. I hope we still come out as friends after that meeting and everything, but there's going to be, I've already seen some of it, there's going to be some things that I think can really help us. We're going to take it really to heart.
So really interesting. You can be your own worst critic a lot of times, and I guess that's probably what could do them a lot of good. So sounds like Sunday will kind of be the culmination of that before they flip the script to Baylor.
Yeah, you always, I think, attempt to have some feel for self-scouting yourself, if that makes sense. Like, in other words, the offense wants to know, hey, man, am I calling the same stuff on 3rd and 3 with the same formation too much? Or am I tipping my hand at all? Like, you want to keep people guessing. So you want to keep those percentages low on kind of what you're doing. Some of it is like bread and butter. Like, you're going to call certain running plays, that you're just good at more often than not. And like, some of it is a given, but this is unique because unless I'm misunderstanding, basically you go against each other and you've gone against each other. But now I think what I'm understanding is Zach and his side of the ball and his coaches will break down Tim's side of the ball as if that's who they're going against this particular weekend.
Yeah.
And then say, here's what I see. Here's how I would attack you. Here's where you're weak. Here's where you're tipping your hand. Because you really never have time to do that. A lot of times it's looking in the mirror and trying to internal and making sure that, your percentages or your trends are not too much giveaway there on what you're doing. But that's pretty fascinating. And obviously Tim and his group will do the same thing with Zach and that offense. And then I think you take that info and go, okay, all right. And I think that's what Joey's saying is like, we're all still friends and you're not going to be too critical. And some of it, in this case, some of it they'll already know. Like I tend to think that Tim will go, well, your offensive tackles at times are going to struggle. So we feel like we can do, and Zach will be like, yeah, I know. I already know that. That's not, so right. There'll be some obvious with that, I think. But I think trends and maybe, formations and personnel groups on either side, because I think that we get caught up into, we talk about the 10, 11, 12, 13 personnel, which is, how many running backs and then how many tight ends are in for an offense. And you've seen Zach run I think it's mainly 11, 12, 13 and all that, but it's a lot of, and it looks a different way each time. You forget how many times Tim is switching out his personnel groups too. There is a lot of folks running on and off the field. And maybe whenever you see certain one in, hey, whenever this group comes in, I'm attacking this player or this particular soft spot in that personnel group. Okay, well, I hadn't thought about it like that. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can glean and benefit from it, and it's the beauty of a bye week. And the best part is you can do this in about 3 or 4 weeks again if you want to, with the second bye week. So I love the multi-bye week in these seasons now. I think that is one of the best things. It keeps more people healthy. It's better for the fans. It stretches the whole thing out, and it allows you to really put your best foot forward when you're these teams. And I'm all about this kind of thing. And all the while, like, yesterday, this is all going on, but yesterday, most of the staff, they get out and recruit, and they're going to see certain players, and they're going to recruit again tonight with a big Friday night coming up tonight of games and all those kinds of things. So, there's a lot that you can do in a bye week to try to improve your football team.
Well, and it probably sounds like it's easy, but it's probably easier said than done as far as leaving your ego at the door, because, you've got to have a certain, I think, type of chemistry as far as a coworker or a coaching staff is concerned to be willing to kind of listen to these things, right? Or be held accountable. I know the idea sounds like, well, yeah, why would you not? But they're all prideful guys, I'm sure, and just like the rest of us. So probably not quite so easy, but maybe this staff has the chemistry to do it in a fruitful way.
Yeah, because think about it. There's so many things about these teams each week, and like, I'm on the tech side of things. So are you. But you go into these games and you look at all the issues. Like, for example, last weekend, it's like, golly, man, Braylon Luck's kind of just now coming back, and no Amir, no Isaac. Chapman Lewis is not on the trip, and the list is long on all your concerns. You have no idea what the other guy's going through. You have no idea like what they're dealing with, or because everybody's dealing with something. That's just the way it goes, whether it's injury or so-and-so's mind's not right. So-and-so just doesn't play hard. And so some of this will come up in that, like, hey man, I look at so-and-so and we go right at him because he doesn't play very hard, whatever. And then I think you may get a position coach going, yeah, I know, I'm working on it. We tell him every week, but it's some of those things, but like when it's internal, yeah, a little more lighthearted because you kind of already know some of the issues going on with players on the other side of the ball that you aren't even coaching, but it just reminds you that there's stuff going on. You get 100 humans together trying to row the boat in one direction, and you're gonna get lots of health and mental and motivational and all kinds of issues all over the place, and you just don't know what the other guy's dealing with too.
Yeah, no doubt. This might be a dumb question, but is the scouting of prior game film, is it this week's practices, all of the above? What do you think?
I would be willing to bet you that it's the entire season up to this point. I'd be willing to bet you that they will look at, again, I don't know that. That's just a guess. But if you're doing it like over a weekend, like a game kind of thing, I think you look at every game up to this point like this is the opponent you're about to play, and you put things on paper like, this is how I would attack you. I would go after this player. I think he's soft, or I think this dude is really, really good. Or when you get into this is how I'm going to attack you. And I think like you could take all these things and go, okay, let's try to, figure out a way to be better there, because I mean, you got good coaches on the staff. You really do. And I think that you just rarely do you have time to like look at it this way. So might as well use your own resources for good in this case.
Yeah, makes sense. And hopefully we'll bear some fruit as we get ready for the Baylor Bears to come to town. And speaking of the Bears, I wanted to begin to turn our attention Baylor way, because this has been an interesting past couple of years since Coach McGuire has been on campus. Obviously some close ties as it relates to Coach McGuire and his time spent in Waco prior to being here in Lubbock. Had a big build-up. Patrick Mahomes in town a couple of years ago. Baylor comes to town and they screw up that party entirely. Last year, you go down to Waco. Baylor forgot to bring their offensive line, and you just murder their quarterback all night long, which was a lot of fun and something I'd love to see a lot more of. But Baylor most recently going down to the hands of Iowa State, and you and I have been cautioning everyone all week long, don't just expect a cruise through this one because the record isn't all that shiny. Let's take a listen to Baylor head coach Dave Aranda, most recently giving an assessment of his team and of his locker room. First, today's episode brought to you by ZBiotics. ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. So just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you're going to feel your best tomorrow. So go to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use our code LOCKEDONCollege at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantees. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they're going to refund your money. No questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege and use the code LOCKEDONCollege at checkout for 15% off. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. And NFL fans, you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Say you're watching a game, you get hit with a hunch, an instinctual calling. Well, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you're going to place your bets to keep up with everything going down in real time as you submit that slip. And right now, FanDuel is going to get you started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's right, $200 in bonus bets guaranteed with only a $5 bet out the gate at FanDuel.com. Let's take a listen to Baylor head coach Dave Aranda, most recently giving an assessment of his team and of his locker room.
I thought defensively, the amount of motions and shifts, it would be as if there was someone swimming in shallow water and they'd swim on out into the deep, dark ocean, and the deeper water really sank us in terms of the adjustments and just all of it. We would be seeing something new, get on the sideline, adjust to it, go back out, not get it correctly, but not hit it correctly, and then there'd be some type of missed tackle or missed opportunity one-on-one. And I think those two things, just the prevalence of just the adjustments that had to be made, the level of detail, which is a price you pay when you play these people. They do a great job with it. And then that combined with the missed opportunities one-on-one, I think did us in. And so that's frustrating and difficult to say. This last half of the schedule, I'm excited about attacking it. I think that there's great matchups ahead for us. You have a locker room that's just really pissed off and frustrated, and I know that we'll be able to get them turned in the right direction.
I've still got a lot of respect for Dave Aranda as a football coach, Chris, and giving him time to prepare for Texas Tech is not something, obviously, that I take lightly. But I was also intrigued to hear him talk about some of the pre-snap stuff that seemingly was tripping him up, because we've seen some of that from Wes Kitley and his offense. Who knows if it will be applicable again in this matchup, but I think you were describing them to me earlier in the week as a cornered animal, something along those lines. And you better be careful with one of those, right? Home or away. And I know we've had some comments from Matador Mob insiders we've been texting with this week as well, talking about, hey, we got a nothing to lose, kind of football team coming to town. Whereas you maybe feeling a little pressure with the success that you've had. So can be a very dangerous spot, again, home or away.
Yeah, every time, every game you go forward while you're in this thing, every one that you win, it's just going to make, add more pressure onto you because of that. And I think for whatever reason, it just hasn't connected with Coach Aranda and his team yet this year. But they are talented. They are very competitive, and I think you'll get. It's like they're going to show you their teeth and snarl and spit, and they're the wounded one in the corner that's just fighting for their lives. And theoretically, I think you've got a coach that is coaching for his job. I mean, that's just I wouldn't have guessed it was really that close, but boy, so many people that cover Baylor or are close to the situation there have all said in the offseason, Mack Rhoades was really close to pushing the button back last December or whenever that was, and just didn't ultimately do it. And then you had new coordinators enter the equation. I think Jake Spavital, who's calling plays on the offense, he's a great offensive coordinator. Ironically, he's the one that was coaching at Cal last year that didn't coach against you in the bowl game because he was in Waco preparing for this season already. His brother Zach used to, coach here on the defensive side of the ball. But yeah, I just this one's tricky. I think a lot of people will assume you're at home and you kind of come off of a big win. Yeah, it'd be a bit of a scary game. But can I reel off these numbers here for you? I think you kind of hinted at it.
Lay it on me. This is really interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my man, I'll give credit to my man Aaron Dickens for this. He texted me the other night. We were talking about something else, and you and I had talked about the fact that Baylor's a bit tricky because they came in here okay 2 years ago, and as you mentioned, they got right. They got right that night, and then they went to Norman and won. However, after that game in Norman, the wheels have just fallen off of this football program. So they come and ruin Pat Mahomes' night and everything like that. They ruin your night. Joey probably had his night ruined because he had just come from Baylor, and it's probably he wanted to win that game desperately. And you get blown out. What was it, like 45-17 or something? You had so many turnovers. A.J. McCarty had a pick six, if memory serves.
Yeah.
Since that night.
First, today's episode brought to you by Robinhood Gold. And with Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for high society. Now the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth, and these generous benefits are now available for only $5 per month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold, so sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC.
Since that night, Baylor is 5-17 overall. But here's the kicker. Baylor is 2-13 in the Big 12 since they left Norman. Okay, so they beat you. They beat Oklahoma the next week in Norman. So I'm talking about since that time. They are 5-17 overall and 2-13 in league games. Because remember the stat? Like Baylor hadn't won haven't been an FBS team in like over a calendar year and all these things. I just don't think people realize they've really struggled. And what's crazy is, so since that night for you are 16-7 overall, and you're 11-4 in Big 12 games since that time. Crazy, like how it flipped. Because I mean, that was year one under Joey. It's like everything's set up. You got a night game. Mahomes is here, taking the curtain off. His name's up there. I mean, the whole deal. And you just kind of melted. And Baylor just ran it at you, and you turn it over, and it was just but I mean, whatever happened, like shortly there, I guess it was the week after, these programs have gone in vastly different directions. And hopefully it stays that way.
Indeed. Do you think that Aranda, to this point in his career, I mean, he's got a Big 12 title now. He's 12-2 a few years back, but always highly thought of as a coordinator. But is the verdict just about in on him as a head coach if there's not something interesting happening this year, which has so far been a 2-4 and 0-3 in Big 12 play start?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's not going to get your program in trouble. He's going to be a different individual. He's not a guy that's going to get up and win a press conference. I mean, you heard him. He's just very, very cerebral, very quiet, very turned down. And that's trickier this day and age as far as, getting out and raising money for NIL and all that kind of stuff that it takes. That's why Joey is such a good fit, and he's such an engager with the public and with everything that it takes to run a corporation like a college football program, like you have to do these days. But I think there's no doubt that Aranda is a really good defensive mind. But if this opportunity doesn't work out, yeah, good question. Good question. He may end up being he's still really young, and other people like him. Some are kind of like, I don't know, that kind of deal in the industry, but it's a mixed bag. But I mean, ultimately, with that Big 12 title, that's Matt Rule's guys. Yeah. That's really the knock. And Sonny Dykes is hearing the same thing. Hey man, those are Gary's guys, not yours, that won that. And heck, you chose Chandler Morris to be the starting quarterback that year. If he doesn't get hurt, we may have not even done that. So those titles are worth something. I just think that it's got a shelf life for you a bit, because they were right when those guys got there for the most part. And so that's the counter argument to both, is that you didn't do this with your people. You did this with the other guys. Although, heck, I mean, they don't take the title away for that. But I'm saying, as you look at when a coach starts to struggle, you go, man, we can't. Because what do we say? It's easy to get good, very hard to stay good. And both of those coaches and programs are proving that right now.
As for Texas Tech, what you mentioned there in this stretch of Big 12 play over their last 15 games, 11-4, something similar to what we saw in a very successful time from 2007 to 2008 for Texas Tech. But this stretch, has not gotten you any hardware. I'm not trying to act like it's really brought anything to your trophy case, but the wins and losses are what they are, and it's a successful stretch. And if you're able to get a win against Baylor, you were kind of tossing around like we may be looking back to the border conference in the 1950s for a better 16-game stretch in conference. I've kind of mentioned here and there, given what they've done as far as returning to bowl games, winning bowl games, that I felt like Joey McGuire, undoubtedly, you cannot argue this, in my opinion, has returned at least a baseline pulse to the Tech football program. And I'm just kind of wondering if enough people have noticed that, and or whether or not we should already at this point in time be saying unequivocally that Joey McGuire has been a successful hire for Texas Tech. I don't know any other way to spin it, to be honest with you, especially given the context of some previous hires since the Pirate left campus.
Yeah, I think you have to understand, if you just judge a football season, if you win a conference title or not, you're going to, most everybody's going to be just very unhappy out there in the world. Okay. And some programs judge it on whether they win the national championship or not. And that's in some ways that would be a fun existence, but in a lot of ways that's a miserable existence, because it's so hard to do. And I think that even now you have to judge these seasons differently. There is a bit more margin for error now that the playoff has been expanded. But for Texas Tech, I think sometimes people forget you've struggled a lot. And even in your best years, 10 or 11 wins, and you're like, my gosh, this is what the other half, or a lot of the other world gets to experience, way more than we do, because you just don't have that many.
Right.
So an 8 or 9 win season, and people may go, yeah, it's pretty good, but I wanted more. Well, yeah, everybody, I get that, but it's not like you're just rolling around. I mean, that's what's crazy, like about the Mike Gundy situation. What is it? 18 years of bowl eligibility in a row, and I think there's 9-10 win seasons amongst that stretch. And yeah, they're struggling big time right now. But I mean, had you had a similar stretch, I mean, we would be very difficult to be around as a fan base, because we'd be talking so much ish.
We'd be intolerable.
Yes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like, I think with that too, there's probably some fatigue in Stillwater. Yeah. Like, okay, we kind of do this all the time. It's not even special anymore. I'd like to try on some of that fatigue because there's a couple of years, not too distant, in past that I'm sitting at home for Christmas. There is no bowl game. Season's over come December 1. It's like, okay, well, time to put up the sideline broadcasting gear for the year or whatever. No more Joey McGuire shows. It's just over. And
which we couldn't even consider once upon a time when we had the longest streak going. Yeah.
Exactly. So you just have to, people can judge it however they want. I'm just, based on history, there's just not a lot of special seasons. Yeah, I mean, 73, 08, 76. There's a handful of some others. But I thought 04 was unbelievable. I thought 07 was great. I thought, for much of the, 2013 was really fun. With Cliff's first year, because you were really, and then it just kind of the wheels fell off, but it ended the right way with the big win over Arizona State there in San Diego. So I take that however you want. You are trending the right way. Joey's done a really good job. At some point, he's going to say louder than anybody else ever could, I want hardware. I'm not here to have this thing trending in the right way. I want a championship. I want to be in Arlington. That's what the goal is, and I get it. But heck, to even dream about trips to Arlington not too far ago was like, dude, you're so far off. I mean, and maybe not so much anymore. So that's progress.
Got to crawl before you can walk, and we're doing some crawling right now. All right, we're talking a little baby gibberish. Okay, we're going to be putting words together, stringing sentences along, and writing the novel pretty soon. Chris, appreciate the time as always, man. We have made it to the end of the most electric open week in the nation. Couldn't have done it without you, so appreciate all the time and insight. Enjoy the weekend, and we're back to football when we reconvene.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Enjoy the bye week, people. Give it a big hug, and we're back at it early next week.
Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thanks especially to the everydayers for being out there. If you're an everydayer, why not be a Matador Mob Insider? Your direct line to Chris and myself. Just hit the show notes for the link there to try on a free 14-day trial and start getting those one-on-one texts straight to your phone. And of course, one of the best ways to help us grow the show is to comment anything below. So thanks to those who are doing that regularly as well. For Chris, I'm Casey. We appreciate you being out there and hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.